A show duct taped together by broken promises and hopes and dreams. Recorded in the corner of Wade's dirty bathroom. Get ready for WMBT.
Have you ever felt so desperate for something you'd do virtually anything for it? That yearning, that calling from deep down within your loins, gnawing away at you, just trying to get out? Well, that's how much some folks need fags in their life, despite knowing how horrible they are. Now, so YouTube doesn't slam my pee-pee in a doorway again by pulling this episode down, I must disclose and make very clear that I'm not here to promote fags. In fact, those little death tubes are quite possibly the worst thing you can put in your mouth. And so what if they're wonderfully social? That's no excuse to be sucking on one. So if you're thinking about going down this road, don't. Your future self will thank you, and so will everyone else around you that has to smell you. Now, in this episode, we're going to cover the origins of fags and the many names they go by, like cigarettes, cancer sticks, coffin nails. We just call them fags where I come from, and I'll explain why a bit later on in the episode. Fags, aka cigarettes, are originally from the Americas, dating back to about 6000 BC, and are the single most traded item on the planet, with about 1 trillion cigs sold internationally each year. That's more than any other consumer product in the world. In 2024, it was recorded that about 1.2 billion adults used tobacco globally, down from 1.3 billion in 2000, and a drop of 120 million since 2010. So that's about 1 in 5 adults, or 20% of the population, and over 80% of those users are men. Adding to that number, unfortunately, are 38 million kids between the ages of 13 to 15. This includes all forms of cigarettes, cigars, pipes, and smokeless devices. The average consumption is a pack a day, which roughly costs between $2,000 to $3,000 a year if you live in the UK or the United States. So yeah, globally 1.2 billion are hooked and 8 million die annually, including 1.6 million from secondhand smoke, which is pretty shitty. I found researching for this particular chapter very disturbing. So brace yourself. However, we do end on a somewhat positive note, so it's not all bad. Now then, each time you suck on a fag, more than 5,000 chemical substances gets drawn into your body's tissue, like tar. Black shit that begins to coat the teeth and gums, causing decay over time, in addition to damaging nerve endings in the nose, causing loss of smell. And of course, your lungs get weakened too, which increases the likelihood of infection as well as chronic diseases like bronchitis and emphysema. It does this by damaging the cilia, tiny hair-like structures whose job it is to keep the airways clean. Within about 10 seconds, the bloodstream carries a stimulant called nicotine to the brain, triggering the release of dopamine and other neurotransmitters, including endorphins, that create the pleasurable sensations which make smoking highly addictive and dangerous. In fact, About 1 of every 3 cancer deaths in the United States is caused by smoking. And it's not just lung cancer. Smoking can cause cancer in multiple tissues and organs, as well as damaging eyesight and weakening bones. It also makes it harder for women to get pregnant and causes problems with men's whatsits. So basically, every puff is a middle finger to your lungs, wallet, and sex life. For those of you who quit smoking, though, there is great news. Just 20 minutes after a smoker's final cigarette, their heart rate and blood pressure begin to return to normal. After 12 hours, carbon monoxide levels stabilize, increasing the blood's oxygen carrying capacity. A day after ceasing, heart attack risk begins to decrease as blood pressure and heart rates normalize. After 2 days, the nerve endings responsible for smell and taste start to recover. Lungs become healthier after about 1 month, with less coughing and shortness of breath. By the 1-year anniversary of quitting, heart disease risk plummets to half as blood vessels function improves. Then after 10 years, the chances of developing fatal lung cancer go down by 50%. Now, there's a lot of helpful tools to help people quit, like nicotine replacement therapy through gum, skin patches, lozenges, sprays that may help wean some smokers off cigarettes. They work by stimulating nicotine receptors in the brain and thus preventing withdrawal symptoms without the addition of other harmful chemicals. So, bottom line is, there's hope if a Nazi smoking monkey happens to be on your back. Fag butts are the single most littered item on planet Earth. 1.6 billion pounds every year to be specific. And they take about 25 years to break down while quietly poisoning the soil and water, which isn't very sexy. Meanwhile, back in the 1960s, big tobacco already knew smoking caused cancer, which was very naughty of them. But instead of coming clean, they bankrolled decades of disinformation campaigns to keep the cash a-flowing. I'm certainly glad that the drug companies don't deploy such heinous tactics. Anyway, when these lying assholes finally got caught red-handed, they got dragged into court and sued into the history books. $206 billion and counting forever. And yet, they're still out here selling death tubes. Side note, the first modern cigarette machine was invented in 1880 by James Bonsack. It made up to 200 cigarettes a minute. However, today's monsters spit out 20,000 per minute. The Americas cultivated tobacco as far back as 6000 BC in Mexico, Peru, and the Caribbean. It was a sacred plant used for rituals, offerings, and trade. No one was calling it a death stick back then. Fast forward to 1492, Columbus and his crew spotted people in the Caribbean rolling up smoking leaves they called tobacco. So they grabbed some, sailed home, and got the Europeans hooked. By the mid-1500s, smoking blew up in Spain, Portugal, and beyond. Sailors and traders were spreading fags like gossip, marketing them as miracle cures for headaches, plague, or anything else they could think of. Now, in England, smoking didn't become social until the late 1500s, and the British word fag, for cigarette, doesn't show up until 1888, describing the fag end, the burned out butt, the end you put your mouth on. Tobacco started sacred in the Americas, then became Columbus's souvenir. Got sold as a miracle cure, exploded globally, turned into the most traded death stick on Earth, lied about cancer for profit, got sued for billions, and still kills 8 million a year while littering the planet with toxic butts. However, there is an upside. If you smoke, you still can fully recover if you quit.
Wade Martin's video thingy.
Oh, God.
Don't subscribe.
WMBT.